Today we're going to recondition this used tank and start the office build. What's going on, guys? Devin from ReefDudes. Now I'm super excited because I finally got the new office starting to be set up and going to start the new office build. We're going to get the new tank in there, ready to roll, and show you a few tweaks we're doing along the way. So just to start out, this is the stand that came with it. So I picked this tank up a couple of months ago for a couple $100, so it was a pretty decent price for everything. And overall, you know, nice metal stand, has a built-in light rack. If you look down, decent little platform. Now my only one little complaint is this is a pretty tall stand. So the stand itself is 40 inches high. And if I'm standing beside it, like, you know, you're kind of looking down a bit. This is going to be beside my desk, so I want the stand to be a bit lower so it's more eye level for the tank as I'm sitting there working. It's kind of just, you know, nice view throughout the day. So I'm going to lower the stand by about 6 inches. So I'm just going to chop off about 6 inches, re-weld it. The other thing I'm going to do to modify it is take out the center brace. So if you guys have had center braces, they're a bit of a pain. And to do that, I'm going to use thicker metal. So I'm going to use, this is 1x1. And we got 1x1 all the way around. So I'm gonna get, Buddy's gonna do this for me. We're gonna put in 1x2. So 1x2, so just like a big U shape. That will do a lot more support for the front half of it, and it's gonna let us remove that front kind of brace, and it's gonna be, should do the trick, and it's gonna be a lot nicer to work on the tank. Just for painting it, did a bunch of coats, but this is a enamel, rust enamel. So I use this actually on my CO2 tank, and it's been holding up well. I mean, it's not directly in water, so I think it'll work well for the stand. Now for the tank itself, kind of exciting. So this guy is kind of a custom tank. I picked it up used for a couple $100 a few months ago, tank stand, and this lovely thing for a sale. Now it actually looks pretty darn good right now. When I first got it, this thing was looking pretty nasty. It was full of coralline, it was all gunky. Like if you look in this overflow box, that's actually not bad. I did some cleaning on it, but if you look at that little bottom chunk, the whole tank was like that and much worse. So I spent a good hour or so cleaning it, and a lot of people kind of ask, like, what's the best way to clean? How do you recondition a used tank? So first thing is, if you have old coralline, which, you know, if it's new, it's, you know, red, pink, purple. If it's dried up, it's going to be white. So if you see little chunks of it that I still haven't cleaned up yet here and there, that's old coralline. Or if you look inside of the bulkheads. So what I do, I mix vinegar and water, so kind of 50-50 solution. Can pump it up and use it to spray on the tank. And what that does is it will help, the vinegar will help dissolve it. And then once it starts to soften it up, I'll start using razor blades. So this thing's super cool. I actually bought it for the nano tank just to clean the edges that are close to the rock. And got off Amazon. You can use shaving razor blades, so you can get little stainless razor blades. You get down all these little funky spots and angles. The other one I tend to use all the time is kind of like the Kent Marine ones. So there's a little handle for this somewhere, but just use that and kind of scrape the edges. Now if you're scraping glass, never do it dry. Always use water. So make sure you spray it first with water, and then you're not going to scratch the glass. If you use a dry razor, or if it's rusted or anything like that, you risk scratching it. Now the next major thing is going to redo the plumbing. Got lots of lovely silicone and stuff on it. These bulkheads look a little old, like, I don't know, they look the nicest. If you buy a used tank, I always like to use new bulkheads. So we're going to take this off, we're going to redo all the plumbing. Once I get it all off, we're going to take all that out, then it'll make it easier to get in there with the razor blade, clean it some more. This guy's picked it from Home Depot. You can probably buy it on Amazon and other places, but it's kind of an adjustable wrench. And these things are great for doing bulkheads, so I kind of consider or call it my bulkhead wrench. But you open it up, get it on there, unless you get a grip on those nice wide kind of flanges. And once you get it going, you can kind of pull it off by hand. This one's a bit of a bugger with all the silicone, but we'll get her off. So new bulkheads, we're going to re-scrape it, re-clean it, get this tank as close as we can to being brand new. Another thing you got to look at when you get a used tank is if you look at the silicone seams, as long as they're still, they don't look dried out, you're fine. On these still look pretty fresh, so I'm not going to worry about it. But I have seen some before, if they start looking like they're cracking or other stuff, that might be a time where you want to consider re-siliconing, which is a bit of another level. It's not that hard to do. Silicone and glass is amazingly strong, so You basically just need that little bead. The most important thing is that you have a little gap in there, and that gap of silicones adds all your strength. Now, for those of you that don't know, kind of what I'm thinking my current plan might be, I have no idea if it's going to fit. It's really highly questionable, but I'm going to attempt to fit my current rock and fish from the shallow reef into this tank. And this is going to be kind of like the future office tank and temporary holding tank for all the current stuff. My plan is, if it can all fit in here, then it will give me a chance to use all new rock and get the water box up, cycling, rolling. And once everything's happy, I can start transferring stuff, corals and the fish that I want, all that stuff into the new tank. Now, the dimensions of this tank are 36 by 28 by 14. So it's kind of really cool. My original plan was more or less just doing a frag tank, but now it might turn to like an office display / frag tank, but I think it'll be pretty cool. I'm really excited to get this guy going. Now, this guy gobbed on a ton of silicones onto the seams. I'm not sure if there was a leak or he's just using that instead of Teflon tape. Actually, there was Teflon tape as well, so silicone actually does kind of work pretty well instead of Teflon tape, so that is something you can do. Usually I just use a little bit though, not gobs and gobs of it, but almost got her off. So on your tank, your bulkhead is really kind of like your main connection between the glass and your plumbing. So it's one of those things that if there is any questionable parts of it, they're not very expensive, just replace them. And we got our 3/4 inch return, so got that one guy off. We got our 2 1-inch drains. Now, I almost always go with the Bean Animal style overflow. I like that extra level of redundancy. This one only has kind of a Durso or Herbie actually. So we got our 1 open siphon channel. Is there a hole in this one? There isn't. So normally what I would do is have one as your full siphon, and this one is your trickle drain. So I could technically drill a 3rd hole and convert this one, but I'll probably leave it as is and just work with this one. Now, when you're reassembling bulkheads, one of the biggest things is do not over tighten them. If you do, I mean, thinner glass, I've actually seen people crack them, which is kind of sketchy. And for thicker glass, it's not as big of a worry, but still a risk. So do not over tighten them. Ideally, just hand tighten them snug. If I use the wrench, I'll do just a little nudge just to kind of fully seal it off. There we go. We got our 2 drains out, all nice and lovely in there. You can see the kind of the clean glass right beside the nasty. So now I'm going to just spray a bit of water in, use a razor blade, scrape this out a bit. I just want to be careful we don't hit the silicone seams, as always. And we'll get this tank looking like new. Now, when you're scraping glass, always make sure it's wet, as you're going to greatly reduce the chance of any scratches happening. So can't stress that one enough. No one likes to see a nice big scratch in their glass, so always just a little bit of water goes a long way. All right, all our bulkheads are out. Just gonna clean up the edge of that hole a bit. So if there's any rubber, any little bits around the edges, when we put our new one on, it's gonna keep it much cleaner and less risk of anything ever leaking. Now, for the new bulkheads, we got 2 1-inches for the drains and 2 3/4 for the return. Again, super easy to install. Just make sure that your area is nice and clean. You see our little rubbery kind of gasket that goes on the inside, and that sandwiches it against it, just to make sure there's no possible water leak. Now, I always like to do it mainly just finger tight, and if I do use the wrench, I'll do just a little bit of a snug up at the end. So just, no more than a 1/4 of a turn. All right, so 1 bulkhead done. Repeat process for the next 3, and we'll be good to go. Now, looking at the sump, this obviously needs a bit of a cleanup still. This is just 1 super big chamber. You can tell they used to have a baffle here before. I have no idea why they took it out. Would have been nice if they left it for me, but I'll have to go to a glass shop and just get 1 piece cut out for that. I'm probably going to leave this as a super basic sump. I don't think I'm going to go crazy with the baffle. So I think what I'm going to do is, probably do a filter roller. Just leave this whole area open for skimmer, or if I do refugium or a turf scrubber, whatever I do, we'll figure that out. And just 1 single baffle for the return pump. That way my ATO will stay within a reasonable limit. I think it's going to be good. Now, I actually did just measure this, and this is just about 31 inches, 32. And I actually really like the height of this right now. So I think that's 31, so 32 to 34 is what I'm going to go with the stand height on this guy. Warren, if you're watching this, thank you, buddy. He's helped me weld this up in the next couple days. So definitely appreciate that, and I think it's going to be pretty awesome. I'm going to take a couple of the radions off the current tank and set them on here. So I'm thinking, you know, and probably get away with 2. I mean, I have 5, so maybe I'll put 4 on there, maybe overkill. But either way, I think it's gonna be pretty cool. So yeah, so buying a used tank, I mean, you can get some wicked deals on a used tank. The biggest thing, at least for me, is one, make sure the silicone's too good and make sure there's no big scratches in the tank. So thankfully there's no really big nicks anywhere. There's a couple little minor ones, but not overly even noticeable. Silicone was good, you know, for a couple $100. I'm pretty stoked for setting this up. This is gonna be a pretty awesome office tank. Sump, a little on the basic side, but it'll do the job. This is completely a bit of a kind of a budget build office tank. So either way, I'm excited for it. I'm going from 20 gallons to 60 gallons. So it's a pretty big jump from the Nano to this. So I'm excited for it. So don't be afraid of a used tank. I mean, as long as the silicone is good and there's no big nasty scratches, you can get some wicked deals. For a couple $100, I'm pretty stoked on this tank. I mean, I'm doing a few modifications, lowering the stand by about 6 inches. I have to add a baffle to that little tank for the sump. Aside from that, it's not that bad at all. So yeah, for a few $100, I'm pretty stoked. So this is kind of episode, I guess, 0 or 1 of the office tank, shallow frag tank, display build, whatever you want to call it. Haven't quite decided yet. Was going to be a frag tank, but now it's going to be a bit of a display and probably most of the rock from my big tank. So we're going to see how this one goes. Kind of excited for it. It's going to be happening pretty soon. So as always, guys, if you enjoyed this, hit that like button. If you're new, make sure you subscribe, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.